David Liggett with Data Center Hawk. Focus on cloud and co-location, data center industry trends, and dynamic market. Well, I'm David Liggett with Data Center Hawk, and I'm so excited to be joined by Nicholas Laag, Managing Director and CEO of Prime Data Centers. Nicholas, great to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, David. Good to see you again.
I would love to start with your background in the data center industry and in this space. How did you, get to the position of starting Prime Data Centers, which we can talk about in a moment, and just talk about your background in the space?
So my background basically is more finance, private equity. Started my career investing in operating businesses, strategically or controlling stakes in Europe and Asia, and very much infrastructure and real estate focused. And then I was also part of co-founding a water utility business and was based in China for 6 years. And so essentially our background, me and my two co-founders, we've been for the past 14 years. So Klaus, he started a software business. And so we have a bit of vertical technology and real estate. And I think it was 2003 was the first time I got acquainted with the data center when we underwrote a transaction. And frankly, we weren't really sure if this is real estate or telecom. And little did we know how this would evolve, obviously. So in short, for us, we felt as simple real estate guys, really where we want to focus. And we have platforms in Europe as well in commercial real estate. And since roughly 4 years, based on my initiative, we basically started popping over here to the US and felt, hey, California is the right place to start. It's the epicenter. It's still the biggest exporter of data center needs. And so started searching the market in the Bay. And that's really the background of Prime is really, we felt strongly that as a sector, there is tremendous secular growth, and we're extremely excited about having the know-how of the vertical of technology and real estate and combining that with the people that we have.
Yeah, it's always interesting to me to get to hear, where different leaders, how different leaders of whether it's data center operators or even like leaders of IT infrastructure within like the actual data center users themselves, how they got into this business. A lot of people do come from the real estate angle or the financial side of things. So I know your perspective, probably has a lot to do with numbers and how those numbers pencil out as it relates to return on deals and things like that. But talk about, just starting Prime. You mentioned California made sense for the place to begin. You mentioned too that it's the largest exporter of data center needs, which is a great way to put it. I mean, some of the world's largest companies are headquartered, right in the middle of, the Santa Clara and Northern California area. But just talk about starting the company right now. Your portfolio is in California, and just are there options to be outside of California in the future? Talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for us, it was. West Coast, I guess we should say, because obviously northern West Coast as well is important. But we essentially started looking at Santa Clara, really love the dynamics of that market, and start basically really bringing the right team, the ingredients of the right people who have experience here in the US, both on the customer side, implementation side, and really understanding the customer's needs and their applications. And I think that's really changed dramatically in the past 5 years versus kind of real estate, consultants helping the corporations allocate data centers. I think for us, we need to know and think what the customer's challenges are, be it different applications they're using, the hybrid migration, how they're combining the cloud with their own onboarding. And essentially for us, it's a stepping stone, right? So we started in the Bay, looking for opportunities, and actually the first one didn't end up in the Bay; it ended up in Sacramento. So an opportunity came up, and we just jumped at it. And actually, we owned the dirt before we even set up the business. Sometimes that happens. In the meantime, we have 4 projects here in California, and absolutely, as a strategy, we're excited to announce in the near term some additional projects, both acquisitions that we're working with, let's say, strategic and the strategic nature, where we're helping a customer basically buy assets from their balance sheet and let them capitalize, and work with them then also on a build to suit. So it's not all about data centers and building and developing. It's also working really much with the customer and what their challenges are, be that, hey, we have existing assets we'd actually like to free up capital, or secondly, we have assets where we're reducing our footprint because we overbuilt, and part of that is migrating to the cloud. And thirdly, hey, we're going to vacate some assets. And finally, you know what, we need to develop some new ones with new applications. And so that is certainly the essence of our ethos in terms of partnership as a service, and being able to buy assets, being able to partner with the companies, be that through a joint venture, and then work with them if it's turnkey or powered shell, or a combination of the two, as well as buying assets. So as of now, we're expanding in Europe. We have two locations that we'll shortly announce in Germany, as an example. Both, I'd say, quite suitable for cloud as well as hyperscale. And we're also very keen on expanding in Virginia. We've been searching the market a long time, and Chicago as well. So as a strategy, we're really focused on the core markets and acquiring sufficient capacity to do multi-tenanted facilities, as well as build to suit, both turnkey as well as powered shell, or powered shell with a ramp up, more adaptable to the customer's needs, that they can ramp in turnkey. So, long-term powered shell, and as they need it, they can basically either build out the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing themselves, or we can do it for them in stages. And so certainly focus on the core markets here in the US and Europe. And then, look, frankly, we'll work with our customer anywhere. If they want us to basically buy the dirt, or buy their dirt that they already own, and do a build to suit or some sort of phased approach, that's really our strategy.
Yeah, I think that highlights the importance of flexibility. If you think about the industry 10 years ago, like one of the things that I saw, and this is back when I was working with a CBRE, a real estate company, was, the data center operators, the mindset was more around, hey, we're going to build this. This is the most efficient way to build. This is exactly how you have to do it. And I think over the last, 5 to 10 years, we've seen a flip where it's a much more of a partnership approach. You mentioned that, being flexible, really trying to understand, hey, what are the opportunities to, not just build this one thing for you, but how can we, work with you not on just this project, but, others down the road. The other thing you mentioned, which was great, was, Chicago, Northern Virginia, and Europe. And those three areas, at least from my perspective, our market tracking, we saw over 77 megawatts of absorption last year in Chicago. We saw several hundred megawatts of absorption in Northern Virginia, and Europe is where a lot is happening right now. So obviously you all are right in the middle of where the market is moving. You mentioned Sacramento, and a lot of people in California probably know this, but if you're looking maybe from outside of California in, talk about kind of the difference between Sacramento and Santa Clara, and why like a data center user might prefer somewhere like Sacramento over, in the Bay.
Yeah, we really liked Sacramento as an alternative solution or a complement for the Bay, right? And certainly the Bay is competing with your office, your residential. It's very difficult to get
everything,
both dirt, power, etc. Secondly, the cost is certainly also higher. And so for the applications and requirements that are not super latency driven, right? You have essentially Sacramento that from a source of education, people, skill set, workforce, the Sac metropolitan, 2.5 million people. And, from San Francisco, it's a 1.5 hour drive, a little bit less than 90 miles. And the latency to the Bay is less than 4 milliseconds, which also kind of addresses the majority of the requirements. And so that, in combination with SMUD, which is extremely I'd say if you look at the history and its reliability compared to some of the other providers here, don't want to name anything, but the local providers, it's been a bit unstable here in California, right? And Smart actually, both from an environmental point of view, you can be 100% green, and even its normal source, it's roughly 40% hydro, and the cost of power is significantly less than the Bay, and even less than Santa Clara. So your TCO is basically reduced. We have a campus on a economical zone that allows us to have a lower power in addition. So there's essentially a reduced power compared to the SAC area. We have our own substation, so we have 50 megawatts or 50 MVA of available power, and we have the dirt to expand. So that's also important if you have a company coming in, and it's not just 4 or 3 megs. We can really work long term with the customer base to see that there is a security that it's not only this year, next year, but actually that we can grow into it over a longer period of time. And then for several companies, frankly, it's off the St. Andreas fault. So from a seismic point of view, environmental point of view, there are those benefits.
Earlier, you mentioned turnkey data centers and powered shell facilities. We've seen certainly some changes with those lately, but what are some of the advantages you see with the turnkey facility versus the powered shell?
Well, I mean, for us, it's no difference. It's really what the customer needs, and certainly depending on the type of customer, there's certainly benefits for some customers that have, let's say, a bigger requirement and greater in-house capabilities of deploying the mechanical electrical, be that for a hyperscale where it's quickly deployed. They have a model, it's their, call it, proprietary model, and they love basically taking control of that and phasing that in, and certainly that's an advantage for them, right? And then it's also an advantage because we can facilitate with the site selection and the shell, which also takes, that's maybe not their skill set. They prefer really focusing on building out the MEP and then deploying the IT. And at the same token, you have customers, well, look, they just need 2 megs or 3 megs, and they need it in 6 months. And then obviously the benefit is doing a turnkey model. So I think it really depends on the need of the customer, and individual customers will have different needs as well, depending on location. If it's a real larger requirement, and then you might go to a smaller market and the footprint would be less, and then they rather just deal with a turnkey solution and not have a longer term kind of powered shell model. And finally, there also can, let's say, getting into the finance part, but there are also accounting effects for the customers. So there's some benefits on that. That if they basically are able to own more of the MEP, they can depreciate more of that versus the landlord owning more of the MEP. So there's some tax effects on that as well that the customers could benefit from.
Yeah, it seems like the sophisticated users are the ones that have the ability to really understand those types of advantages and maybe differences between the two models. What are some of the trends that you see either impacting like the enterprise data center space? So, maybe companies that don't have the 10, 20, 30 megawatt needs, but have the smaller, 50 cabinets or 500 kW or megawatt. What are some of the trends that you see impacting those type of customers?
Well, it's been evolving, right? I mean, I'd say when we really started digging down into this market, and with the phenomena of the cloud, you would have argued, at least we're pure wholesale, and we will always be. I mean, that's the strategy. It's really focused on that. So we're very much about serving retail colo companies as well, and one actually under a strategic initiative as an example, because we'll never compete with them, right? That's our focus. Having said that, if you look at the industry, and you say, there was kind of there's many CTOs who are really focused on it's a cloud all strategy, and then they realize over time that actually they're it's not so easy, and some of the applications still today don't live in the cloud too well, and they need to be, from a latency point of view, it's not a 3 meg, it might be half meg or 1 meg. So what we've seen is there was a lot of uncertainty based on let's say enterprise and the timing, and I think there was a lot of internal reviews that were being done. I mean, we had one example with a large retail group here in the US. We're working on a initiative to actually buy the asset from them. They're reducing their footprint. It's been going on for, I think, 18 months. We're still in discussions with them. It just takes them time. In the meantime, they also had 2 CTOs and the strategy's changed, right? I think long term, what we've seen is that actually, I think obviously there's a lot of growth skewed to the cloud, and the numbers are growth rates are much larger. Having said that, we see and believe very much in the hybrid model, and see that basically becoming more and more a strategy and of enterprises, and irrespective of the weighting between those two, there's growth. And if you look at the fundamental factors of that growth and the needs of that growth, be it compute or in storage or analysis, AI, data, it's just phenomenal. And new applications are introduced all the time that continue to grow that factor. So we think actually, obviously there's lower growth, but from an enterprise point of view, I think their requirements for smaller deployments will continue to grow. And we also think smaller deployments potentially closer to the end users as well.
Okay, so one of the things that we have seen data center users really value is flexibility. And if you look back over the last several years, that certainly is a trend that we're seeing in the market. So, as a data center operator, from your perspective, why do you find it's important to, deliver that? Whether you think about a, built-to-suit, powered shell, turnkey infrastructure, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, we think it's certainly important, and you need to be able to have a dynamic environment or solution when you're designing a building. And so if we take a turnkey example, and you take into account your electrical topology and your mechanical footprint and what you can actually cool in terms of density. So in short, yeah, we feel it's critical that you're designing for a more adaptable solution, because a lot of the customers at the end, one, it's the IT needs and the IT, let's say the rack density from a customer to customer is different. And we see that trend as well. So you might have a customer that needs, 6 kW rack, and it's an easy environment. And you might have a customer that needs 12 or 15 kW rack. And so certainly we're working very closely with our design team. In the event we're doing a speculative build that enables a turnkey solution. I mean, if it's a build to suit, by definition, then it's very much tailored towards the customer. But as an example, in our facility in Sacramento, we designed basically for the ability to expand, right? And on that note, we're for the first time publicly announcing that we fully leased that facility.
That's great.
So we designed that for basically initially being 6 megawatts, but we had the ability to increase the footprint and density by 33%. So now we are able to deliver 8 megawatts to this customer. And in addition, work very closely with them for tailoring, let's say, some of their TFOs in the case of Sacramento. And there's another example I mentioned earlier when we have so there's a strategic discussion that we've been having for quite some time with a prospective customer, and working with them to actually purchase their assets. A number of their assets, free up capital. So that's the one part. And at the same time, we work with them to work on a build to suit on a number of locations. And the one location there, also here in the Bay, is actually then a powered shell. And again, work very much with their needs, that they have the ability to essentially piecemeal build out their mechanical and electrical. So from that point of view, I think if you're not on point in terms of delivery speed and design flexibility, you will be funneled into a small amount of customers. I think you really need to have that today in order to serve the different type of needs.
How have you seen COVID-19 and the challenges with that impact the space, and how do you think it will impact it moving forward? It seems like we're in a different phase of working through the challenges with the pandemic. And certainly the data center industry has responded, in my opinion, in a very favorable way in keeping facilities up, their people as safe as they can. But just talk about your experience in that and how you think the industry will fare moving forward.
I think the experience for everyone was obviously unique in our lifetime, right? And in terms of our industry, yeah, certainly there was a real spike in demand, probably March, April, May, and June. I think overall, long term, what are the effects in the next years? I'm an optimist. I think we hopefully come a bit to more normalized situation, and we realize hopefully with the vaccine and things normalize. Having said that, I don't think COVID-19 will have an exponential effect on the fundamentals of our industry longer term. I think that might have some percentages or less than that. I think we've seen a short-term spike, and then sure, I think the like of Teams, Zoom, and those applications. There's more mobile work. I'd say at the same time, maybe this was an acceleration, and in 10 years, this anyway takes place, that we're more mobile because the ability to be more mobile, not to mention 5G coming and being able to really be mobile, right? So, yeah, I don't think that this there's a significant change long term with COVID-19 to our industry. But it was a positive bump for some, that's for sure.
Sure. Yeah, it was interesting. At the beginning of 2020, we had already seen, before the pandemic, hit, we had already seen, a significant amount of growth, starting even before that. And so, when you put the pandemic challenges and what that did for the industry from a growth perspective on top of that, it, created a historic growth year for our space, but I don't think it was all related, as you mentioned, to COVID. So it sounds like, at Prime, you'll have some very exciting things on the horizon, not just with the markets and facilities that you're in, but with other places that you will go. I mean, from your perspective as the leader of the organization, what gets you excited about the next few years in this industry?
A lot. The fact that our customers are also challenged with the sheer growth, and for us being basically call it a partner, potential solution provider for their infrastructure needs, I think is really interesting, because it's really about, you need two sides to basically dance, and for that I think there is a unique situation in this industry, and I think it will continue. And overall, the sheer growth of the industry as well, and the change and speed of the industry with regards to the customers' IT applications, new applications that are only cloud-based, or and I think we haven't even seen. It's like when we look at this back in 2002, who could imagine where we are today? And I think the fact of where we will be in 10 years. Obviously, we're biased, but we feel that the amount of compute and data, and you hear some statistics that 90% of the data has been produced in the past 2.5 years. So with that exponential effect, and the way our lifestyle works, in terms of media content and the access of that, I think it's really interesting.
Well, Nicholas, thanks so much for sitting down and sharing your thoughts on the industry. Also, it's exciting to hear what Prime is doing, and the next few years will be really fun to watch your progress. So thanks a lot. We appreciate it.
Thank you.